more and more than that. Sometimes you got to work overtime to save some souls. It's a blessing to have a job in today's economic turmoil. Not only is it a blessing to have a job, it's a blessing to work in a job that you enjoy. And you can do it even when you don't want to do it. Can I get a witness? I look back over the years at some of the first jobs I had, and I didn't like all of the jobs I had. But I still learned a lesson from working on those jobs. Mainly, they taught me what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to pick fruit. I didn't want to work on an assembly line. I didn't want to work all night in a factory, especially on the night shift. I didn't want to work in a restaurant. I did that, been there, done that. I didn't want to do a lot of manual labor. And this became motivation for me to make the sacrifices needed for me to buckle down and study hard, to discipline myself when others want you to hang out with them. But when you've got a goal, you've got to develop a plan and then work the plan. Because nobody plans to fail. But a lot of people fail to plan. And so you have this great job or not so great job. Nevertheless, you've got a job and you've got to go to work. And you don't mind doing what's required of you, but when they want you to work overtime, it's sometimes a challenge. But some people use working overtime as a scapegoat. They excuse themselves in the neglect of their duties to their families. Well, I got to work over, so I can't do this. I can't go here. I can't do that. The children will go unsupervised because they're busy working overtime, trying to make an extra dollar to get the extra things, material things in their home. But you can rest assured that unsupervised children will get into trouble. Sooner or later, they'll hang with the wrong crowd. Or their spouse that you are neglecting will begin to feel neglect, and then you'll have problems in your home. So be sure that even if you are asked or required to work overtime, that you make sure you keep a critical balance. You may gain the money and the materialistic things in this world by working a few extra hours and making a few extra bucks, but it can cost you something more valuable than you can afford. In our text today, the job these men had were fishermen. You may wonder why Jesus messed around with some fishermen. Well, fishermen are hard workers. They have a good work ethic. That they are durable. They have to know how to deal with disappointments. Because they could fish all day and all night and catch nothing. But be ready to go out the next day to do the same thing. You got to have a strong chin if you're going to be a fisherman. And they don't let one day's work or lack of work define who they are. And these fishermen had the right type of work ethic that Jesus needed. They knew how to be patient. And you can't fish if you're not patient. I remember going fishing with my father, and I sit there and I get tired of looking at that little bottle. When is something going to happen? I couldn't see through the water because the hook was further down. The bottle just let you know that something was on the hook. But brother, I got tired of just watching it. Fish ain't biting today, Dad. It's time to go. No. Gotta wait a little while longer. Been 5 minutes, Daddy. Time to go. No, we gotta wait a little bit longer. We just got here. So the next time I went fishing, he packed me some snacks. And every time I said something, he said, here. Just keep on watching. You got to be patient if you are a fisherman, because the minute you want to give up, then the fish come. Because it's nothing, I'm telling you, it's nothing like dropping the hook in the water and the fish coming right on the hook. And then if you all call a school of fish going by, what a fisherman at? Then I got to turn around here to the club. Thank you, brother. I mean, we caught a school of fish going by, me and my dad and my grandmother. I didn't have to put a worm on the hook, Brother Vince. I just dropped it and they were jumping at everything. We were just snatching them up. I'm like, yeah, that's fishing. But some days, you just wait, trying to catch something. And so these fishermen were patient. And they had to deal with adverse weather conditions. Sometimes the sun is beaming down on them all day long, and sometimes it's raining and the winds are stirring the boat, but yet that's their job. If they don't fish, they don't eat, and their family cannot be provided for. So they've got to get used to going through some adverse conditions and some high winds and some stormy seas. And they were diligent, they were consistent. These are all behaviors that we must have in order to make disciples. And so Jesus encounters these men as he is about to speak to a large crowd. He didn't have an armor bearer that carried his own personal sound system with him. So he used the elements of nature, and he asked Simon if he could cast his boat out a little from the shore. And this would allow his voice to carry over the water, magnifying his voice so that the crowd would be able to adequately hear his message. And the scripture says he stepped into the boat and asked Simon to launch out a little from the shore. And he sat down and began to teach. And so after indulging himself to their boat, he decided to bless them. So he told them, launch out your boat into the deep and let down your nets for a draught. He had already spoken the result. Let out your net for a draught, not and see if. He said, let it down and get ready to catch a draught, a large amount of fish. And this is where it gets interesting. Simon Peter, if you know his personality, he probably wanted to say, man, this man is crazy. You lost your mind. Wait, didn't you see us washing our nets? That means we're finished with all the work. But they had been there and listened to his message as well. And so Simon said, Master, just met him, and he called him Master. We've been toiling all night and have caught nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net, because these words that Simon had heard, the Bible says, the people said, we never heard a man speak like this man before. And so Jesus had a chance to teach all of them that were there, including the fishermen, and his message had an impact on them, that they were honored to give him his request. And when they did it, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes, and their nets began to break. And they called their partners to come to them from the shore, and they loaded both of the boats with fish, so heavy that it began to sink. As hard as fishing is, you've toiled all night, you've washed your nets, and now someone, a stranger you've never met before, asks you to launch out into the deep. That's overtime. Somebody say overtime. Overtime. You put your time in and been as patient